In the world of Tron, we've seen different types of programs which serve many functions. These programs can be identified through specific directives, rank, and circuitry colors. The biggest types of programs we've seen are basic programs, ISOs, data pushers, viruses, and so much more. Basic programs are created by users with set roles and directives. For example, we've got Tron here, who worked as a security computer program tasked with protecting the grid, and in the first movie needed to take down the MCP for good. His friend Ram was an actuarial program who worked for an insurance company. Another program in the games, Crom, worked as a compound interest program. And then on the legacy grid, Beck, Zed, Mara, Abel, and others worked at a garage as mechanics. Cutler was an aerodynamics program, Gorn was a technician, Shaddix from Tron Betrayal was a system utility program, like an architect basically doing energy distribution and making repairs to the grid. There's also Keller, who was a scientist, Query, who was a detective for the Disciples of Tron in the Arc Grid, and Exa, who is a courier program, and lastly, Sirens, which are specific to the games, getting programs ready, as well as being a guide, as seen with Gem and Lux. These programs and their circuitry color vary depending on their beliefs and whose side they're on. By default, programs have been seen with blue or white circuitry, and this means these programs believe in the users, and in the case of Tron, he fights for the users. If we take into account users like Flynn, Sam, Eve, and in a non-canon example, Jet and Alan from Tron 2.0, they are users with typically white circuitry, but in the case of the early movies in 2.0, blue circuitry. Now skip about 10 seconds if you don't want to be spoiled on Tron Ares details, but Julian Dillinger is seen turning back into Sark at the end of the movie, orangey red circuitry. This proves beliefs play a true role in the colors they embody. Programs in red or orange do not believe in the users and serve the MCP or Clue. Just because they don't believe in users or side with them doesn't mean they don't fear them. As seen with Sark in the first film, he's afraid of dealing with Flynn, and in Legacy, Clue in a way still respects his creator and wishes he'd have the same viewpoint as him. As you can see, there's a lot more to the antagonist side than just hating users fully. Regarding how many of these programs actually change sides is best seen in Tron Uprising due to Clue's repurposing process, or as it's later called, Rectification. Programs could be turned by force to Clue's side, with much of their personalities not remaining. There also was some programs that willingly joined, like Paige or Dyson, who similar to Tron was a system monitor or security program protecting the grid. Within the MCP or Clue's army, we've seen roles such as Commander given to programs like Sark, Paige, and Pavel. Sark directly reports to the MCP, while Paige and Pavel report directly to General Tesler, who occupies Argon City on Clue's orders. We got to see Sark's lieutenant briefly in the first film, but beyond him, some guards and tank programs, which we'll return to in just a little bit, we get to see more of Clue's army and their potential than the MCPs. The guards we see in the first film aren't seen at all in Legacy, but they are in Uprising along Sentries, which are other security programs charged with maintaining order. These elite soldiers right here though are known as the Blackguard, and they are Clue's most important. They, alongside the repurposed Tron, now known as Rinsler, are able to control the entire grid without any major pushback. Though there is revolution as seen in Uprising and explained by Kevin Flynn, it has not done much to overthrow Clue. These Blackguards are the deadliest, carrying around weapons like their light grenades, staffs, and more. They all once had white circuitry, and some of them were even on a team with Tron and Dyson. Some of these programs, for example, were named Reeve, Nord, and Clax. Sadly, they were too valuable for Clue, and if he couldn't persuade them to join him with his system administrator role, then he would have had them round up to be repurposed, as Tron sadly had to witness. In Tron Uprising, we know that Dyson was Clue's highest ranking soldier, and through some script pages for the Tron Uprising movie we never got, it was revealed that there was some tension between Clue and Dyson, since Dyson failed to capture the Renegade. Based on this, it's not impossible to think that at some point Dyson was derezzed by Clue, similar to how he derezzed Jarvis in Legacy, and that secondary disc Rinsler has could very well have been Dyson's. And following this, he would take Dyson's disc and his place as Clue's highest ranking. Now that part is speculation, but it does answer a lot of questions like why we never saw Dyson in Tron Legacy. But speaking of Jarvis, his role was simply just Clue's chief administrator, informing him of many details going on within the grid. We saw him tell Clue the Rectifier is on schedule, which was carrying a bunch of newly repurposed soldiers to get ready for the real-world invasion. These programs, as mentioned earlier, lose most of their personality, but not all of them are lost causes, as seen through Tron and Cutler. They were able to reject the repurposing and either turn back permanently or temporarily. Cutler did not lose his personality, as we saw he still had his when tricking Beck in the final final episode. Now between Uprising and Legacy, the name changed from repurposing to rectification, so this process was likely continuing to evolve. Now this isn't the only form of repurposing, as a more minor version was used by simply breathing in pathogenic code created by the scientist named Keller in Tron Uprising. They set up many accidents as well as parties to make it easy for programs to inhale it. This was like an orange gas and only powerful due to a signal tower that Beck would later destroy. Since we're on the topic of Clue's forces, I want to bring up Paige again, as I left out earlier that she was originally programmed to be a medic with green circuitry, and green circuitry programs on the Legacy grid are typically medics, but in the first movie they're actually seen as tank programs in the MCP's army. And this is speculation once again. I like to believe the green circuitry means these programs truly care for others, like with medic programs they take care of other injured programs, or in the case of tank programs they possibly protect programs from quote-unquote villains in their eyes that would disrupt the current system. What's interesting about the circuitry colors as seen in Tron Uprising is that some programs will have their default white or orange light lines, but there's actually secondary circuitry colors with these programs and they're not seen in Legacy. Zed, for example, is seen with green secondary circuitry and his light cycle is fully in green, showing that some programs' vehicles will change color to their secondary color. This is further backed up when Beck took Zed's bike and it goes from green to a bluish white. These colors are here to represent their personality in a more detailed level than just the two sides. While on the topic of green, we need to shift focus to the green-yellow looking light lines, as those with these colors are considered viruses. In the Tron Evolution video game, we meet a virus named Abraxas. This was originally an ISO named Jalen. He was turned into a virus by Clue. This happened during the time when Radia, the leader of the ISOs, planned on taking the role of system administrator, which was the same role Clue had to establish unity on the grid. Then Abraxas attacked and killed many programs. Abraxas then infected many programs, which would further spread the virus. These infected programs become mindless droids infecting anyone they can, and Gibson was an example of this as well. Now, similar to Cutler, Gibson was able to fight back the virus, but it was not permanent. He unfortunately had to meet his end as the virus was overwhelming. Now, before Clue 2 was programmed to create the perfect system, we had a version of Clue on the 82 grid, which was made to help Flynn find a file to expose Dillinger for stealing his work. This Clue was a hacker program with yellow circuitry. As we went over a moment ago, yellowish green is a virus and corruption, and Clue 1 was a hacker breaking in, but Clue 2 did not start out this way. If you only saw Tron Uprising, you'd make the mistake that he always was yellow, but with Tron Legacy and Betrayal in mind, we know that he had white circuitry, meaning the change he had from white to briefly green to full yellow meant he was slowly breaking away from his neutral status, going to the extreme to fulfill his objective, that being to create the perfect system. While we speak of yellow and green programs, this isn't actually the last group of green programs, as there's more within the ISOs. Yes, they usually have white circuitry, but in Tron Evolution, it showed us a different faction of them with green light lines. Now, before diving further into it, we need to go over what exactly an ISO is. They are isomorphic algorithms, or ISOs for short. On Flynn's private grid, we learned that these programs popped up from the sea of simulation. What was so fascinating about them was their digital DNA being so complex compared to the average program. It's even said that Flynn himself couldn't even understand some of it. This is what he called the miracle, and how it could bring about great change to the real world. What's even crazier about the ISOs is that they had no specific directive, so their freedom is on an entirely different level than basic programs. We gotta go over the glowing symbol on their arms. We have a male ISO symbol, which is a hexagon with an arrow shape, and a female ISO symbol, which has a hexagon with a T shape. Now, unfortunately, ISOs did struggle to coexist with basic programs, as they were considered different, and basics made it hard for them to move into the ISO district in Tron City, as well as other locations. And due to instabilities on the grid, and of course Clue's schemes, we learned about another faction of ISOs that formed in the Outlands, known as the Bostrom Colony. They had green circuitry, and one major character from this colony was Gibson, who was an ISO that took on a system utility role similar to Shaddix, which makes sense since he was close to Flynn. Now, continuing on with the ISOs, we need to focus on two creations of Kevin Flynn's. The first being Anon, who is a system monitor made to help Tron with the recent attacks, and in the end was able to save Cora. And at the same time, right before the coup, Flynn made a new grid called the Arc Grid. It was a safe haven for ISOs, and unfortunately Flynn couldn't return to them due to being trapped in the Legacy grid, and thousands of years passed. And all these ISOs split into different groups, where we see a familiar pattern pattern of good versus evil playing out. We have the main group of antagonists known as Core, who actually worship the users in this story, and they are the authority controlling the grid. We then have Automata, who don't believe in the users at all and don't really care about them, but are more focused on themselves with their lives in this world, since, as I had said, it's been thousands of years of them being left on their own. It's really interesting to see these roles flip, and it's interesting because Core has orange circuitry, whereas Automata mostly has purple, which I assume can give us the meaning of peace from within and very focused on goals as a group together. I'd say it gives off similar vibes to the medic programs in Tron Uprising. And then we have EXO and other programs with their normal bluish white circuitry. This is due to them being neutral, average, everyday programs fulfilling their tasks. But focusing on these programs with their roles, it really makes me think about the grander themes in all the Tron movies. The original Tron movie shows us that those who believe in the users and Tron's will are able to break free from the oppressive rule of the MCP and his army. We see this in the case of Yori. She was originally a digitizing supervisor who was appropriated by the MCP to focus on simulations. She wasn't able to express herself and just did what she was tasked with until Tron was able to give her the energy to remember and break free. Side note, but Yori is one of the few programs seen without a disc, and it's actually quite interesting how different the meaning of a disc is in this grid compared to the legacy grid, because it means everything there. You become what is called a stray, which is losing your memories and everything about you. You'll regain your memories if you get your disc back, as seen with Beck, but this is also an easy opportunity for Clue and his soldiers to bring you to their side and repurpose you. But back on topic, in Tron Legacy, we're able to continue showing the power of the users and the programs who believe in them, as seen here when a program prays as Flynn walks by. But free will isn't as simple as MCP and Clue bad, once they are defeated we are free. Tron Legacy brings in another group of programs which adds way more nuance to the discussion. These programs are the ISOs, as I was mentioning just a little while ago, how they have more freedom than basics. But even beyond the ISOs, Cyrus, he has the argument that Beck, as well as others who surpassed their programming, only believe that they did, and this is just an extension of their programming. It leaves the viewer and characters with a lot to think about, that even beyond Clue or the MCP's oppression, that the ISOs are either the only group truly being free, which is why they're hunted, or the fact that every single one of them isn't free, which is why a character like Cyrus had the plan to destroy the grid, because bringing it all to an end would lead to true freedom in his eyes. And to further go into detail on Beck and other programs surpassing their programming, we need to look to Tron Ares. Skip about 20 to 30 seconds if you don't want to be spoiled. In the final battle with Ares and Athena, Athena tells Ares that following the orders that Dillinger gave them is their purpose. Ares responded saying that that's their programming, but that's not their purpose. That's not what defines them, and that'll later be determined as they live throughout their life. So Tron Ares especially shows us that programs are not locked to their programming, and it debunks what Cyrus says, but it's still interesting to kind of see these different viewpoints. Now I want to quickly explain the difference between blue circuitry and white circuitry, because they have the same meaning for the most part as I've went over, but Tron Evolution actually shows us the difference between the two. We see Anan and Korra with blue circuitry until they're taken in or assisted by Flynn, a user, which causes their circuitry colors to change to white. And this also might not mean that much, as in Uprising, Korra had white circuitry before ever meeting Anan, so it's just as inconsistent as Tron's suit design across Uprising and Legacy. But either way, it's just interesting to see what interaction with users can do to programs. Now I want to close off this video with more minor characters we didn't go over. For example, Bit, who we've seen in Tron 1982 and Uprising. He can only respond with yes or no, but he can fully understand what you say and even responds excitedly depending on the topic of discussion. We have Dumont, he's the tower guardian who allows for programs to contact their users, as seen with Tron and Alan. Nearby, there's tons of data pushers who have little to no personality and take care of small miscellaneous tasks. They have varied designs to the point where it's almost difficult to even explain. And yes, I have saved the best for last, the MCP. He was the dictator of the grid in the first film, but he originally was programmed by Walter Gibbs as a chess program. Over the years, Dillinger modified him, and the MCP was able to learn and grow, being able to steal data and functions from other systems. He was able to control Dillinger in the real world and programs inside the grid. He believed himself to be superior to any human or program, but as Dumont once said, he started small and he ended small. We even get to see the MCP's face at the very end, but that's all the programs in Tron explained. What do you guys think of all these these programs? Let me know down below and subscribe for more Tron videos.